Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to CHS Art Department's Manic Monday, and this is lesson number 2. So my name is Mr. Miller, and I teach sculpture and IB art here at Chesterton High School. Today we're going to investigate another piece of artwork. It's an American painting, and it's pretty famous. In fact, I'd say many of you may already be familiar with it, at least in one form or another. So the painting we're going to look at today is located at the fabulous Art Institute of Chicago. And if you haven't been there, I highly suggest you go. It's one of the most precious resources we have in Chicago and really in the country. It's one of the greatest art museums you'll set foot in. So it's a short South Shore train ride away. If you haven't been there, please try and go. The Art Institute really is a world-class museum. Their collections rival that of the Louvre in Paris, or the Tate in London, or the National Gallery of Art here in Washington, D.C. And the artwork you can see there spans the centuries. There's work from ancient Egypt and Greece and Rome all the way to contemporary art, with the work of someone like Jean-Michel Basquiat, who we're seeing here. It's also the home of many other great masterpieces that are often reproduced. This one's called Sunday Afternoon at Le Grand Jatte, which is the name of the park, and it's done by the artist Georges Seurat. This, too, is one of the most reproduced pieces of work in the Art Institute's collection. The building itself is rather formidable. It's done in Beaux-Arts style, and it's a solid brick building with clad on the outside with white stone and cement panels. This building, like many of the museums in Chicago, such as the Field Museum, the Planetarium, the Aquarium, they were all created for the 1893 World's Fair, which took place in Chicago. And they were created for the fair and then moved to their current locations later, some of them. But they all share very similar architectural styles and looks to them. This section is called the Modern Wing. It was done in 2009, and it sits on the north side of that same building we just saw. It's much more modern in its architectural design, all glass front, out facing Millennium Park. And inside is the Art Institute's collection of modern and contemporary work. On the back of this building is also connected the School of the Art Institute, and that is one of the great art schools in the country, and certainly one of the greatest in the world. At the front of the building stand these two larger-than-life bronze lion sculptures that have, over the years, obtained this beautiful green patina on their outside. You can see how large they are when you see the person standing in the crook of that lion's tail. They're formidable beasts. Nowadays, they've added something to the front of the lion's face. Obviously, it's reminding us to mask up before we enter the museum. And the museum is now open for business again after being closed for a long time. The city does this with some regularity. They decorate the lions with things related to big events happening in the city. Inside the museum is just beautiful spaces just to walk around and explore. This central atrium has a giant skylight that floods the area with light and just makes the experience of walking through, whether you're looking at artwork or not, just being in the space feels amazing. The painting we're going to look at today is located in the American wing of the Art Institute, and this gallery is devoted to American artists working over the last, say, 150 years or so. Our painting today is located directly ahead of you, right in the center of this slide. Have you seen it before? Look a little closer. So here's the painting up close. The painting is titled Nighthawks, 1942, and it's by the New York artist Edward Hopper. This painting is one of the most recognizable and famous American paintings ever created by any artist. It's the single most requested image for reproduction from the Art Institute's collection. And that's saying something. Homer eating a pile of donuts. Star Wars. And the doomed Titanic. I could show you many, many more of these and take up your whole morning, but I will not. I must, however, show you my favorite one, and of course it's Star Trek. I'll let you bask in its glory for a moment. Now, let's get back to the original. Formally, this painting is very calmly composed with strong horizontal lines throughout. The sweeping lines at the top of the restaurant and the bottom, the bar, the street, and the architecture outside all contribute to this horizontality of the picture. And that gives a kind of quiet compositional effect. And even though some of these lines are technically diagonal, and sometimes diagonal lines in a composition will have a very powerful effect, directional and movement creating. Here, there's such gentle slopes and kind of subtle that they read mostly as horizontal lines. And so it keeps that kind of calm, sweeping, side-to-side compositional motion. There are vertical lines, and the vertical lines of the door, the mullions in the windows, the wall sides, and certainly in the architecture outside. These vertical lines create sort of small spots of order as we go side to side, and it kind of helps our eye segment this painting as we move. It works nicely together with horizontal and vertical lines to keep the composition quiet and reflective as opposed to strong and dynamic. Well, let's consider what I kind of find more important about this picture, and that's its content. As we consider this painting further, it tends to in toward the light, or toward the action, if you want to call it that. It feels like a cinematic scene, and the painting kind of begs you to decipher its meaning, to give it a story. It just feels as if there's some drama here. It's set in an all-night diner on a deserted street corner of New York City at night. The dark, lonely, and quiet setting of this painting certainly evokes a rather bleak mood. Kind of sounds like the start of a mystery novel, doesn't it? Even though these people in the painting are gathered together in this small late-night place, they seem to be silent and disconnected from life and from each other. There's very little human connection going on here, no interaction. And the sort of harsh light that you see inside the diner kind of adds to this feeling kind of unease. It's artificial and it's bright. It's probably reflecting the fact that fluorescent light tubing was created around this time and would certainly have been used in any diner that Hopper used as reference for this painting. This creates a strong contrast with the background, and where the shadows outside seem to fall away into deep darkness. And the darkness is mysterious. Is it the unknown? Is it the wilderness? It's also notable that there is no entrance shown to this diner. How do these people get in there? They couldn't all come through the kitchen door, it doesn't look like. So it may be outside of the picture frame, but as far as the painting is concerned, we don't see an entrance. And so as we move in toward these people, we do feel a sense of barrier, an invisible barrier of the window. And with no entrance, it feels almost like we're looking at some kind of a cage or an aquarium. We're looking at these nighthawks in their habitat, and we're looking at them from a distance, as if they were an exhibit in a museum or a zoo somewhere. Hopper's paintings often explore the themes of isolation and loneliness. People living out solitary lives, perhaps at the very edge of civilization. Again, here, a worker isolated and alone at the end of the evening, and at the very edge of civilization. In the forest beyond, there's nothing. Hopper loves showing interiors of houses and apartments bathed in light and shadow. And here he created this edge of the world environment. There's no people here, but the same sort of mysterious and almost surreal quality to his painting that shows this kind of common interior. And you step out the door and you're falling right into the ocean in the middle of absolutely nowhere. So here's Hopper. And yes, he does look dour and gloomy himself. He does kind of look like a guy who would have painted the paintings we just looked at. And maybe somebody who might yell at you for walking on his lawn like an old crotchety old man. However, when you look at the timeline here of when he was working and when he lived, he was exposed to a lot of grimness. He started working and started painting or making his living as an artist during World War I. And he worked still through the Great Depression. And then this painting was done in the height of America's involvement in World War II, 1942. So you can't think of much more of a gloomy and grim time to be working and living in this country. And there's a lot of pain and kind of misery that he was sensitive to. One other point of the time in which he lived, during this whole period, many people were moving from rural life out in the country to a more city life. And that was kind of a transitional upheaval for people, and I'm sure Hopper observed many people who had a hard time, particularly during the Great Depression. So I feel like these are very important contextual ideas when you start trying to understand his work and why he chose these themes of melancholy, kind of sadness. All these things were likely on his mind. One of the great things that I love about Hopper's work is that he just leaves the narrative or the story in his paintings unexplained and open-ended. He leaves it up to us, the viewers, to fill in the blanks and to create our own sort of sense of meaning here attached to his beautiful imagery, so for us to understand his work and to understand what his real intent was. This ability to draw us in as viewers, to kind of force us to use our own creativity and our own sense of closure to create storylines and to infuse our own ideas and histories and thoughts into his paintings. I think this is a main reason why his work is so inspiring, so beloved, and certainly so impactful. And if you think about it, his work also is very reflective and relevant to what we're all living through right now, with all the isolation and the sort of difficulties we all experience and social distancing. It seemed like on every painting that he's ever made. This is particularly poignant and relevant to what we're living through. So I hope you enjoyed looking through this work and continue to enjoy looking through Hopper's work. So your job for today is to write your own narrative for Nighthawks 1942. 1 page or less, please. A few paragraphs will do. And you can submit it as a text entry to this assignment in Canvas. Alternatively, you could choose to do an internet search for Nighthawks parody and look through the many, many great versions of this painting and choose one of these to write your narrative about. You can follow the same instructions as above. So have fun, and thanks for hanging with us.